Okay, we just went live. Welcome today to this number 7 Divine Law Forum. Uh, Today, I'm calling this title something like Professionals' Licenses, How a Professional's License Bankrupts Them. How a professional license bankrupts them, right? And I'm going to use a personal story, my own professional license, and how I'm not going to say that the license actually fully bankrupted me, but it was used as a tool for the Babylonian Empire to crumble. And so I've not told this story, I don't believe, before in a context like this. So uh, it's been a long time. This was several years ago, back in 2011, I believe, is when my bankruptcy was finalized. So it was a long time ago. I share this story for a number of different reasons, right? In the divine law form, here we are talking about how people set themselves free from the matrix, how they set themselves free from the civil code, from the Babylonian construct that looks like like protection, looks like if you ask your government for permission, you get what is good, looks like you're going to be the elite best practices, right? If you've got a great business put together. So that's the construct that they teach you in school. That's why you pay more to go to masters to get a degree. You know, a business school, you go an extra 2 years and you get deeper programming into what I'm teaching you right now. They're teaching you all about profit, how to take from your brothers and your sisters, as opposed to service, right? That's not what they're teaching so much in business school. You go to the not-for-profit kind of they don't even I don't even think they have that as a they might have that as a degree in college, not for profit, but it's kind of like the stepchild frowned on, looked down upon. That's not why you go to university. You go to university to make a bunch of money. You make a bunch of money by setting up business or working for business, technology, corporations, right? That's what they're training us to do. And then the next level is to get that professional license. That's when you're really going to make some good money. CPA, attorney, doctor, right, engineer. These types of licenses is how the program goes. So I ended up getting a bar license because I was born into my mom and dad were entrepreneurs, and we had run a family business. It was a franchise, actually. I started with Southland Corporation. For any of you convenience store junkies, we had 7-Eleven stores. And so they got one, and they got two, and then they bought a gas station, and another gas station, and we had a little chain of convenience stores going and slash gas stations. And then they set free of that franchise system and started their own chain of stores. And so I joke that Carl Eller, if any of you know that, if you're a junkie of convenience stores, Carl Eller was the founder of Circle K, or the CEO of Circle K when it became a public company. And Circle K bought the Logan chain of family convenience stores called Captain Convenience. And I was a junior in college when this happened. And my parents said, if you want to keep going to school, because they felt guilty, because ever since I was 9 years old, the only thing I had to do is think about growing up, going to school, because I was going to be the first one to ever graduate from college in my family and my parents' family and our lineage. And they really wanted me to go to college, so they sent me to college to have fun and then come back and take over the family business, which is what I did. I just went to school to have fun. So I loved school, but not for the learning, but for the play. Like I went to school on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I skied Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in the winter, and was a ski instructor. And so unless it snowed on a Tuesday or Thursday, and then I went skiing then too. So college for me was a blast, and it was all about fun. And it's not about the things that they tell us or the program that the parents think it is. It's just a joke. And they're teaching us a bunch of lies on how to stay stuck in this program. But my parents, out of guilt, said, when they sold the business, if you want to keep going, we'll fund it. So I said, okay. I first looked at master's school, but that was only 2 more years. And I thought, well, medical school, that's 4 years, but that sounds hard, and I don't like science. That's not for me. So I settled on law. It was like in between. So 3 more years of school before I had to enter the real world. My parents were paying for it. That's why I went to law school, to learn how to be a better entrepreneur, because I figured I could do anything with a law degree that I could do with my master's degree, but more, which is true, because you get an automatic license. Well, not automatic. You got to pass one more test to get that bar license, but that bar license brings a lot of credibility in the matrix. It's a legal license to lie, so obviously it's going to be powerful in Satan's kingdom, right? They hide behind the civil rules of procedure and can lawfully lie. And it's not how they teach it, but that's the result of it. And it's a sick, twisted system that enslaves everybody else with the contracts that the attorneys use that bow down to the local state or federal law, right? That's what makes all licenses or agreements written by attorneys statutory, which means if you're using them, you're giving your jurisdiction to the slave system. So you can't use a licensed attorney and claim to be operating under divine law, because their contracts have agreements in it that refer to man-made law. That's what they teach you as a licensed attorney. You use those references to protect yourself. That's what the attorney that doesn't use such clauses can get themselves in harm's way and find their E&O insurance subject to a claim, right? So you have to follow the statutory law as a licensed professional. That's when you do your vow and you make your pledge to the public system. You're agreeing to abide by statutory law. And this is why you can't learn about the 508 ecclesiastical trusts and the PMAs from your licensed professionals. It's been a hidden gem for the children of God to use to step outside of Babylon, because the licensed professionals, the Pharisees and the Sadducees of the day, won't talk about it. They just dismiss it like this. And I'm here to set that record straight, right? In 2026, creating a continuing legal education course that I intend to have stamped and approved for CLE, continuing legal education hours, for attorneys that show them the alternative to probate court, probate or estate planning that uses non-statutory trusts, right? Just to start to open up the mind of these licensed professionals, just like there's some doctors who actually can see and understand that they want to talk about other protocols than the Western Medical Association's protocols for healing modalities for things like, say, cancer, right? That they're not allowed to talk about under their license. They're more and more waking up to the idea that we're not going to go the way of the license. We want to set ourselves free. Hey, hey, hey. Then they come and they use a PMA to get out from underneath that paradigm, and they can do their medical, what was a medical practice, they can now serve their members in a new way that is not in violation of any man-made law, certainly not in violation of God's laws, to lay your hands on somebody, pray over them, and assist them with their healing, right? You can see how silly the man-made matrix system is when we start to see the programming taught to us in the schools compounds our problem by going to college, then going on to the next level, graduate school. You're paying for the programming that is indoctrinating the world. And so we here, Divine Law in Action, stop doing that. It's one of the first things you do when you start listening to me and you realize that you are a child of God, you are sovereign, and you stop giving your authority away to these licensed people who don't see what you can now see. All right, so my case, I'm going to tell this story about this lawsuit that arose. I had operated a commercial real estate conglomerate, if you will. We had 5 different companies. The primary company was a commercial brokerage company, and I was a specialist on office condominium projects. One of the leading office condo guys in the country, having both been an attorney who who wrote condominium association documents for homeowners, master plan developments, right? I took that same skill set into writing private member, I mean, professional owners associations, POAs we called them, and they were professional associations for people like doctors and attorneys and the professionals who could afford to buy their own building. We would, instead of leasing, I would show them how they could how they could own for less than leasing. It was one of the easiest sales gigs in the world. Like when I would go in and show somebody, how they're paying $6,000 a month for a lease, and when I find out that their lease ends in 2 years and they're paying $6,000-7,000 a month, and it's going to go up to 8 or 9 in 2 years, I could show them how a mortgage for a building that I could sell them would cost less per month, like considerably less, right? And so as a business person, your most expensive bottom line is your rent. And if you're a doctor and you're putting tons of money into your tenant improvements into these buildings, you're putting that into somebody else's building. And they rip it out at the end of the 5-year lease, and it's just a waste, right? And I'm showing the doctors how they can actually turn that into taking their money out of the checking account, putting it into their savings account, and have a nest egg at the end. This is a really easy sell. And this is how I kind of created the whole office condominium market in Scottsdale, Arizona. And took the market from, I think there was like the first project I did, I was a broker. I was a commercial real estate broker at CBRE after practicing law for a while, and I saw how much money the commercial brokers were making in comparison to me as an attorney. $500,000 a year, $750,000, $1 million for the best in the business, the best in Phoenix. It was crazy, and they had no risk. All they're doing is putting landowners and tenants together, right? They didn't have to borrow money. They're just brokering transactions. That's a commercial broker. So after I had my law license, I'm like, that's an even better license. I'm going to go get a real estate license. That's the one that took me down. But the story unfolds. So now I'm an office condo guy, and I'm anyone who's doing an office condominium project would call me and I would consult with them. So I'd get consulting fees, I'd get brokerage fees when I was involved in the transactions. I would get land broker fees for telling people that's a good site to go do an office condominium project on, and I'll assist you in purchasing it, and then I'll market the buildings for you, and I'll actually even buy the first building from you so you can get the loan, because that first purchase will finance the project. You can then go to the bank, of which I was the president of the board, FDIC, I was on the board for a startup bank that did office condominium loans, and I also was the chairman of the board for a community development corporation that did 504 SBA loans. 504 loans were government subsidized loans that if you had a business owner who had cash flow and they had real estate, you could get them a loan with only putting 10% down. And the government backed up 40% of the loan, and then the bank only had to be at risk for 50%. So it was an unbelievable, easy financing opportunity and program, and it was government subsidized, and I was in all the right places at all the right time, and it was just like printing money. Like it was hard to imagine how much fun I was having playing in the Matrix with all these licenses. Right? And then we started a tenant improvement company, a construction company to build, because when we sold the buildings to the entrepreneur, it would just be an empty shell building. And they needed to build the tenant improvements. Well, they're entrepreneurs running, their practice, their business. So I had a solution for them there too. After I sold them the building, I said, well, we'll put in your tenant improvements, and I'd have a team that I just referred all the work out to, and I just take fees, right? So I just became amazing at collecting fees off of all these licenses, right? That was my general contractor's license. And then I started a property management company that would do the property management of the associations. After we built and developed and sold the office condos to the professionals, I developed a long-term relationship with them. I said, hey, I'll manage your association. You guys don't want to manage it? We'll manage it. I'll cut all your checks. I'll hold all your money. I'll collect it all. So I became a trustee for these associations and had millions. I had like 56 accounts, I think, at one time. I'm the sole signer on all the accounts as a trustee. I'm just telling you all these things to demonstrate my knowledge and expertise in doing this on the licensed world. It goes deep. And so now I'm doing the greatest transaction of my life, the biggest one. It's a 2-story office condominium project, 75,000 square feet. It had been cut up so that it could be about 22 office condominiums. And how we did this in the day, typical fashion, is it's just a piece of dirt right now, and I would go create an elevation, a rendering of the thing to be sold. And I would offer to buy the first building or first space, and then I would go out and find another buyer or two, get those deals on the table, get them signed up, and now we could get the deal financed by a banking institution because you had buyers in place, right? And so I, as the broker and with wearing all those different hats I just described, I was putting all those deals together. And I had my clients were the people who had the money. I didn't use my money. I'm just matching deals and information and land and buyers. I'm a broker. And so this transaction had like 3 people that had already signed up to buy office condominiums in it. And then this guy calls and he wants to meet me at my office, and he walks in and he tells me he wants to buy the whole project. He's got a client. I'm sorry. He's got a client that wants to buy the whole project. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's meet with the client. That sounds interesting. I already got some buyers. I don't know if I can do that, but this thing hasn't even broke ground yet. Maybe we could bump the other guys out. If your guy wants the whole building, here's the number. And like 2 weeks later, I'm having a meeting with this guy. By the way, this guy was a residential agent. He doesn't know anything about commercial real estate. He was just a residential home sales guy. And he had a neighbor and a client of his that sold high-end residential homes. So he knew this guy, and he went by and he passed by one of my signs and saw that there was a building we were going to build there, and he's like, this would make for a nice headquarters for that guy. So he called me and he asked, can we buy the project and bump the other guys out? So they wrote a deal right there on the spot and said that they were going to buy the building for this home builders world headquarters in Scottsdale, Arizona on the 101 freeway. Amazing site. It was a beautiful piece of land. And I couldn't believe it that we got the price we were getting. My client, the developer, was thrilled beyond belief. And so, and we made them go, they had to put down $100,000 and then go non-refundable with $500,000 in 2 weeks, $500,000, because we were going to pull all the other deals off the table, right? And so the deal, so they signed that deal. That now it's a letter of intent, they call it. That's signed on a letter of intent. It's a non-binding letter of intent. Until escrow opens, it's non-binding. So that gets signed. And in that transaction, I tell this residential agent that he would get a fee as the procuring agent, because he wrote that into the agreement, and that makes sense. He's the procuring agent representing that home builder. Well, lo and behold, 2 weeks go by, and this home builder says, I'm not moving forward with this deal. I'm not going to buy the whole thing. I can't do it. I don't have the money. But I got some friends who do, and they want the deal. And I want to set up a meeting between you and them, Bradley. So I said, okay, well, let's have the meeting. So we have the meeting, the 4 of us, the residential agent, the home builder, and then these 2 guys. One of them's a professional baseball player, and his like business consultant guy. They got a lot of money, and they want this deal. And so the residential guy didn't say one word the whole meeting, because he doesn't know anything about commercial real estate. He didn't have anything to contribute, but he was there. And so the new guys step up, they do the deal and start a new relationship with me. And now they want to take it back to being a office condominium project, not the world headquarters for a business. So they hire me to now start selling condominiums again, office condos again. So I had one of the two buildings 100% sold by the time the project was complete in the escrow. I mean, complete the construction. And they closed on the transaction. It was the largest transaction I ever did. It was 11 closings in one day. And the office and my client didn't have to bring any of their own money because they used the money, the down payment money from the 10 other people that I sold the office condominiums to. So it was just a crazy, and I can't believe a title company actually pulled this off, but they did the first closing of the entire piece and then started the next 9 closings for the office condominiums right behind it, got it all done in one day, and all the money's wired, right? And before that transaction, about 2 weeks, maybe 30 days before that transaction, now remember, it's a long escrow from vacant land to constructed building was about a year. I'm working with the baseball player and this other guy for that whole year. Haven't seen the home builder or that residential agent in over a year. About 2 or 3 weeks before the closing, I get a call from the residential agent. And he's like, hey, so that transaction's about to close. I was curious, do you have a closing date for it? I'm like, well, what do you care? Why are you interested? And he's like, well, I'm gonna get my commission, right? I'm like, your commission? I'm like, who do you represent? Who are you? I haven't seen him in a year, haven't heard from him. I'm like, who do you represent? And he's like, well, you know. And I'm like, well, are you talking about the buyers? I mean, they're my client. And he said, I said, you call them and tell me that, and have them call me and tell me that you're their client, and I'll pay you the fee. And he says, well, I'm not going to do that. I don't need to do that. You know what we're talking about. And I'm like, I haven't heard from you in a year. I do not know what you're talking about. And I said, you know what? I'll tell you what. I'll pay you a referral because you did introduce me to a guy who introduced me to a guy who I did the deal with, but your name's not in the contract. You're not a part of it. And I said, and he said, well, I think I should get the whole fee. By the way, this is a $450,000 fee, a referral. And I haven't talked to the guy in a year. And so I said, well, since you're not going to call the client and see if I'm going to call him. So I called the two guys, and I said, hey, do you remember this guy? His name was Chris Wyatt. I said, do you remember Chris Wyatt? And they're like, Chris Wyatt. No, I don't remember that name. I'm like, well, do you remember when we had a meeting about a year ago, and the home builder was there, your buddy? And they said, yeah. I said, okay, well, this was an agent, a residential agent that I had 2 meetings with about a year ago because he represented Chris Wyatt. They say that they represent you, and I'm supposed to share half the fee with them. And they just laughed. We don't even know who he is. He hasn't done anything for us. So I call the guy back, and I say, hey, look, the client that you say you're supposed to represent doesn't even know who you are, and I'm still willing to pay you a referral. But there's no way I'm writing a check to you for $450,000, and you haven't been there I haven't seen you in a year, and your client doesn't even know who you are. It just doesn't make sense. Well, he went and hired an attorney. And the closing happened, right? By the way, the best time to interfere with a closing like that, right, is you put notice in on the closing if you have a claim. But he knew he didn't have a claim. There was no documents that evidenced any of his position. So the closing happened. He didn't get paid. I called him up one last time, and I said, hey, this is my offer. I'll pay you a referral and less any legal fees that I have to spend to deal with this hassle with you. And that referral would have been, it was like 20%. So I think it was right around $100,000. It might have been like 80, maybe it's 80,000. Yeah, I think it was 80,000, right? So that's what I offered this guy. And he went and hired an attorney instead. So this attorney then turns around and files a lawsuit against me, against my company, which went by the name of Cavan Commercial. So Cabin Commercial, the Cabin name in Scottsdale, Arizona, is recognized as a big name. It's my partner's dad was a big developer, and he had an organization called Cabin. And so the attorney who took the case thought I was that company, this big company, and he was just going to file a nuisance lawsuit and get us to settle. So he files the suit, but I don't know any of that yet, by the way. I'm like thinking this is ridiculous that this guy would take this suit when he knows I'm offering his client a referral, which is fair and reasonable under the circumstances. But what had happened was when Chris Wyatt went to the attorney, he told the attorney, this is against Cavan, this big developer guy. Here's the claim, and the guy said, okay, well, I need like I need something up front to sue. And the guy's like, well, I don't have a lot up front. And he says, well, how about if you give me a second on your house? I'll do it on a contingency basis. So he said, so I don't have to pay anything up front? He said, no, this is a great case. I know both these names. It's a big player. I can get something out of these guys that'll cover my legal fees. That's all I'm asking to cover, my legal fees. So the guy gave him a claim to his house. And it was like a beautiful house in Scottsdale, $3 million horse ranch. So he had lots of equity, and he figured a small legal fee, a small second behind his first on this property would be no big deal. And he could sue and get a big, juicy settlement and not have to come out of pocket at all. So now, again, I don't know any of this when the story's going on. So I keep telling him from time to time, like, why aren't you taking this referral fee and calling this done? Why are you moving forward with this litigation? This is crazy. You didn't earn $450,000. Nobody in their right mind would side with you on this. And then finally, about a month before trial, I called him up one last time, and I'm like, man, do you really want to waste money going through this legal dispute? And he said, I would potentially settle with you. He said, what's your number? And I said, well, it's always been the same thing. It's the referral fee less any legal fees, because that's what's fair, that's what's equitable, that's what's right. And he said, well, the problem is the legal fees he'd already incurred were over $100,000. And we hadn't gone to trial yet. So now his legal fees were they were more than the settlement number I was giving him, because I said I'll give you a referral plus less any legal fees. And the referral was, I think it would, if it was 20%, because it was questionable what a referral fee is. It could have been 20% or 25%. So, but like a standard referral is somewhere between 25 and 20%. So let's just be lenient and say I would have given him $100,000, but he couldn't accept $100,000 because he wouldn't have got anything for it. It would have all went to his attorney. So he kept saying, I can't settle, I can't settle, I can't settle. And he started to even see my perspective as I shared with him, how it didn't make sense. So anyway, we go to trial. And my attorney, right now, but keep in mind, my attorney was one of the bigger law firms, because this is my first lawsuit as a defendant. And I'm thinking, well, how you win lawsuits is you get the right big law firm on your side. And even though I was an attorney, I wasn't that type of attorney. I worked in a specialty firm. We specialized in homeowners associations, commercial transactions. I was not a litigator. When you want a litigation attorney with power, you go to a law firm that's got a huge litigation team, big monsters that know all the civil rules of procedure and can write mandamuses and all kinds of, technical legal documents that just swallow the other team, right? This is what you do. And I'm at the top of my game right now, right? This is a dispute over the largest transaction I've ever done. And I'm like, I'm going to get a good firm on my side. Well, what a mistake that was. Oh my God, right? So the first thing the guy did was he decided that we couldn't introduce the evidence that I offered a referral to the other side. And I'm like, well, how does that make any sense? That's what's fair and equitable. Of course, that needs to be introduced into evidence. So why wouldn't we introduce that? And he says, well, because there's no law that allows that to pay it. You either owed a whole commission or you owed no commission. So if you suggest that you were going to pay a referral, then the other side's going to make it sound like, well, you knew you were supposed to pay something. So if you do that, you're confessing that you owed a commission. And I'm like, but I didn't owe a commission. There's no person in their right mind who would know the equitable facts on this could say that this guy was owed $450,000 for what he contributed. And I get that under residential law, there's this clause that says, well, the procuring agent gets a full fee, right? So that's what their whole case was based on. But we're not commercial agents. We're not residential agents. We're commercial agents. And my attorney's like, okay, I'm with you on that, but I'm just telling you. So he's playing by the rules, and I'm listening to the professional because he's supposed to know. So I let the thing go, trusting his wisdom, and that's, I'm sure, why I lost this lawsuit. Because when the evidence was submitted to the jury, they had two things to look at. They said I either owed something, the guy was owed a commission, or he wasn't. When the right thing that he was owed was a referral. That's what was right. That's what I offered. But it couldn't be introduced as evidence. So instead, the other side made a big story about how I was this big, evil, commercial real estate guru guy taking advantage of the little residential agent who didn't know any better. And it was just so not the truth at all. And my hands were tied, my tongue was tied, and I'm sitting there watching and even after the testimony in the courtroom, when my attorney asked the plaintiff, he's like, or no, he asked my client. My client was a witness, and he's sitting in the courtroom, the guy who he supposedly represented, and he said, hey, do you know who, and he read the guy's name, do you know who Cliff Wyatt is? He said, I've heard the name. And he says, well, he's sitting in the courtroom. Can you point him out? He's like, no, I don't know him. I don't recognize him. I don't know. He says, well, he claims you were his client and you were owed $450,000 for his services. And there was like a chuckle in the courtroom, like I'm looking at this saying, okay, it's got to be obvious to everybody that this is not owed. But the jury was made up of nine panelists. They were all women, 3 homeschool moms, a kindergarten teacher, and I can't remember the other positions. But what the other attorney did is he pleaded with these people, with these women, that his closing argument was that I was the big, bad, greedy real estate guy who was taking advantage of this poor little residential real estate agent who didn't know anything about how to do commercial deals. And I'm just laughing the whole time, thinking about how ridiculous this is going to be. And even when the jury was deliberating, I'm like, this is crazy. And it didn't take them long. It took them about 3 hours. They call us back in the room, and I'm just sitting there waiting for a positive result, a non-guilty verdict. And they all voted that commission was owed. And it just, like, the whole world. So by the way, the dispute was over $450,000 commission, but after legal fees that were tied to this guy's house and other costs and everything, it was over $900,000 was the final judgment against me and, against my organization. Okay? And by the way, the commission happened in 2006, which is at the height of the real estate market. The legal battle concluded in 2008, which is in the middle of the crash. So I didn't have any funds to be able to clean that mess up. I mean, it was an instant wipeout. There was no more SBA loans being done. The office condominium market had dried up. The world had changed drastically since when he first filed that dispute. And so this is what the topic of this teaching was about how the license can squash the professional. And so this is what I'm speaking about. It's because of the real estate license that I had that had a set of rules civil laws and procedures that that an attorney can use to find guilt and responsibility for you, even when you're doing the right thing, even when you're proposing the right moves. They can work that system and manipulate the outcome that has nothing to do with equity or justice. And I know this from my own firsthand experience as a defendant, and I've certainly seen it on the other side when I'm representing plaintiffs, right? And so, again, not being a litigator, but I mean, like on the commercial side, you have the ability to make arguments that um, the interpretation of this particular clause is going to be looked at to benefit my client. But I can certainly see how the other side can see it differently, and how this dispute does not warrant the thousands and thousands of dollars of legal fees that are going to get wrapped up in the attorneys fighting over the exact language in a particular clause. Right? That's how these things. And in my particular case, the clause that took me down was under real estate law, by the way, which is not designed for commercial real estate agents. Our transactions are so different than residential transactions. We don't sell houses. We don't use pre-designed forms. Every commercial transaction has a set of attorneys in it and separate documents that are custom made for the transaction. Maybe your lease forms, but again, they're commercial lease forms, not residential lease forms. Residential law is a whole set of law all to its own. It's a whole set of code. But when you get a real estate license, they don't separate the licenses. So even though you're a commercial agent, which they actually call commercial brokers for whatever reason in the commercial world, because technically by law you're not a broker unless you've got a secondary certification. You have to go pass a second test. You first get your agency test, and you can be an agent. But the agent's tests are all about residential agent real estate. They have nothing to do with commercial real estate. So the fact that that's the law that was governing my commercial case is why I got beat, because there is no law specifically for the commercial sharing of commissions. And every commercial real estate agent will tell you it's not about procuring a transaction in commercial real estate. It's not the one who showed the space to somebody. It's the one who actually helped the deal get put together, get it signed. That's your client, the person you worked with. And I get how in residential, under the residential law, technicality, they had me. Procuring cause. Procuring cause is the person who showed the space. And I'm like, but the space, the person who bought the space wasn't even the person who he showed the space to, right? The home builder. He didn't buy it. Another group of guys bought it. How can that be procuring cause for this guy? And he could earn $450,000 for coming to 2 meetings a year ago. And he said, hasta la vista. It doesn't make any sense. It's not equitable. And it's not justice. But law, civil rules of procedure, allow such outcomes to take place. And this is what the insurance companies feed on. This is why professionals have to have E&O insurance. And this is why the attorneys know that they can go after you if you've got a license. If you're an LLC, that means you got insurance. That means the attorney can stick his fingers in there and make a claim, right? This is how all of that stuff works. Under divine law, right? We're bringing this all home now. How do you use this to set yourself free? You don't use LLCs. That's what gives the matrix authority over you and your business. You use PMAs, which aren't registered organizations in the matrix. You don't bow down to the man-made laws. You say, I'm operating under God's laws. I'm operating outside of that other system, right? You don't allow yourselves to be taken to court. If you're using statutory organizations and legal contracts, you're playing in their jurisdiction, you can't keep yourself out of court. And I know there's a lot of people that try that chess move. A lot of people in the sovereignty movement that want to go into court and, try and undo the court system because they've got knowledge that it's fake and it's a farce and it's run by black magic coming out of Black's Law books by men and women in black robe, and it's not about equity at all. It's a trick, right? And so once we know that, people are tempted to go in there and try and get them to see things right. But I'm telling you, that's a master chess player. You got to be a master chess player to pull that off, because they don't. Few are the bar holders who know the game I'm speaking of. They're still delusional. They're still running the program. We would think that we can tell it to them and it wakes them up, but it doesn't. And so when they're playing by a set of rules that they are familiar with and they've made a sworn oath to, civil rules of procedure, you coming in with your knowledge and you're a beginner chess player, or maybe you've been at it for a few years, but you don't know how obstinate and ego-driven some of these judges are. So don't think that it's always going to work, that you can talk your way into them seeing it your way. But if you're a non-statutory organization, you got even more chess moves, because you can keep yourself out of court. They can't bring a non-statutory organization into the courtroom because there's all kinds of reasons. Let's first go because you didn't ask for their permission. They don't have jurisdiction. You didn't register. They can't claim you. You aren't using their system. You didn't ask for a business license. You're not filing into the Internal Revenue Code system, right? If you do any of those things, you're putting yourself in their jurisdiction. So you use private organizations, private agreements. You're not in business, you're in service to humanity, into your community with your brothers and your sisters. It's a whole different economy. We call it God's economy. It's an abundance economy. It's divine law. It's not man-made law. And so we're coming to a close here today, y'all, but I hope you can feel my passion, and anyone who's using statutory entities, statutory organizations. I just gave a beautiful example, a painful example that I learned that I'm not bitter about, because it's what helped me be able to deliver this message and know this knowledge and have these downloads from Spirit about how corrupt. Well, it's not even that it's corrupt. It's doing what it's designed to do. It's designed to keep the people numb, dumb, and enslaved in the slave system, using your life force energy to feed their beast. And so when we wake up from that, I know there's frustration and anger at first, but don't fight, don't battle that. Go build on a strong foundation. Don't use statutory organizations. Use the Trinity model. Set yourself free. So go to divinelaw.com. You can get connected to resources that are going to take you deeper. Go to Divine Law Media. How do they get to that YouTube page?
If they're watching this live, they're on it.
Okay, yeah. If you're live, subscribe, like, and share with others, please. This will help us get this message out to more and more. I love you all. I appreciate you all. Until next time. Oh, by the way, we won't be here next week, right? Because we're going to be floating on the river. Yeah, we will be here next week? Oh, okay, sorry, never mind. Scratch. See you for number 8 next week. Adios.